Welcome everybody to DEVLOG 4 of my N64/PS1 inspired adventure game that we're making in the Unreal Engine. Today I want to talk about gameplay loop and what my goals for the game actually are, because I tried talking about them a little bit at the start of DEVLOG 3 when I was drawing and doodling in Paint, but today I want to go into a little bit more depth on that. But make sure you go back, check out DEVLOG 3, we added climbing and block pushing, and we're going to do a lot more cool stuff in this devlog, including creating jump pads that will send us soaring through the skies and free climbable surfaces. That means that right now we can just, vault up onto a surface, like pull ourselves up. After this devlog, we'll have walls which will become like covered in vines in the actual game that we can climb up and move around on, and then, go off or take ourselves to the top of. Or we could jump into them and catch onto these walls as well. So that's what we're going to be adding today. But make sure, like I said, you go back and check the previous devlogs if you haven't already. But I'm actually going to pass to Past Matt in Photoshop for once. And we're going to talk about what the core gameplay loop for the game is going to be before we start adding those features. And I'll talk about those a little bit and why we need to add those and some other features before we start expanding even more. Okay, we're in Photoshop for once. If you remember back in DEVLOG 3, we designed a little dungeon entrance area, and we talked about how these are going to be kind of the alien relics that you go into, and these are going to be your dungeons on each of the planets. There's going to be a lot more to them that I'm not going to spoil just yet, but to unlock these and get inside the dungeons, you'll need a certain number of shards in the world. Here we are. We're blue, and I'll draw myself here a little bit. And your main plan, or your main goal, is to go onto these planets, collect as many of the little shard thingies as you can. There'll be, say, on the first planet you need, say on the first planet you need 15. In the world, there'll probably be 30. And my goal is maybe if you get all 30 and, you get all of them from all of the planets, you get 100% basically, maybe we'll unlock a secret ending or something, but that's so far, it's years away, that sort of stuff. The area we've built already in-game with the big coral tree, it would be about this small as an offshoot area. While, say we had, and then the dungeon would be over here. Actually, I can just use the actual dungeon icon that I made. Here we go. So we could just take this. This is where the actual dungeon would be, at the one end of here. And maybe, when you come to this planet, you crash land, you teleport, whatever. Maybe you start over in some sort of little area connected over here. That's like, pretty... I'd actually probably draw it smaller than this. I think it would probably be something like this, where, you learn to maybe climb in here. So maybe you're stuck in like a lower area, and you have to learn to, maybe climb up this. So you start down here, you work your way up, and then around, and then you can exit. And I think the way I'll control these sort of areas is through a bit of frustum culling and a little bit of just not necessarily loading zones, because in Ocarina of Time or something, you walk through a door and it goes black and then you're on the other side and all of that. I think I prefer what they do in Lost Woods a little bit more, where you walk up to a dark void and then it loads the next area you're in, and then when you're far enough away from it again, that dark void loads in again, because that means that dark void can be at some of these, these entrance and exits right here, and then we can deload the stuff behind it, and then reload it back in if we want to. We can also, if there's a really huge tree, for example, a big coral tree, we could use a lower LOD model of that, level of detail model, outside of the view, and then once we are in this transition range, we change that level of detail and we load the rest of the level in. If that makes sense, anyway. That's kind of the main loop. So again, you'd have loads of different things you could do in here, wildlife to fight, I'm just drawing weird, it looks like a cookie, a really badly drawn cookie right now. But would go through here, you'd explore, you'd do little things, you'd find little caves, little areas to climb up to, and all you'd be doing this whole time is looking for shards. That's the main goal of this area. Maybe there's a shard over here, maybe there's a shard over here, maybe there's a shard down here, maybe there's a shard like right underneath the big coral tree, maybe there's one here, but maybe there's another one behind it. And maybe some people won't go and find the one behind it, they'll only jump across the pond and go find this one. But in this area, as we keep developing it, we'll also fight, add little enemies you have to fight that'll, be protecting it. Maybe there'll be one before the pond. Maybe there'll be some docile wildlife and stuff in there. So you'll have to go out and you'll have to find these things. And I think for the first area, I want it to be pretty easy. I really don't want you to be doing this for a long time. So say you spawn over here, you come out, maybe you run into a few of these. The eye should really be drawn straight to this giant structure over here. It's going to be humongous and it's always going to be off in the distance, so I think players will be drawn to it quite naturally. And I think using this first planet as a smaller scale setup, while we don't have a lot of skills yet, because that's another thing, as you go on and you progress in this game, you get more abilities and more weapons and more traversal tools. And as you get these different traversal tools, which you'll unlock in every dungeon as you progress through them, the next planet will have more complicated exploration to do, and you'll have more of these alien ruins scattered throughout the planets, with one large one, but these smaller ones where you'll be able to use some of these things. And I like that slowly scaling up sort of mentality and gaining powers and then having more things to do. So for this place, say there's another, there's another one down here, and you have all these different areas, and there'll be a number of shards that you can collect in them. If, say, the number to unlock this is 15, but the planet has 30, a total, but this is like the needed amount, then I'd probably put 10 here, and then scatter the other 20 between these other outside areas. Which means that a player could go through this area, find everything in here, get to here, and then get a message saying, oh, you need 15. Then go off to just up here, pick up a couple, go up to here, get another couple, and say, oh, I've got 15 now, come back and do that. And you could skip all of this. But I also want this content to be there for people who want to play more. So if you're someone who wants to go through these levels, meticulously exploring and, really learning about the planet and seeing all the different wildlife and areas that there is to offer, you can do that. Now I think I've kind of explained all of that, and you guys are going to get an idea of how the game is going to flow and progress and what the initial gameplay loop is going to be. We have to kind of narrow that down now and really think about what the minute-to-minute elements or the second-to-second elements of that gameplay loop are going to look like. Because we have the jumping and we have the climbing, so say we've got some sort of big sort of mountain here and there's like, a platform here, and, you could climb up here, you could do like maybe a little climb like this, or you could come around and you could walk up this path, something like that, We give them options, and then there you go, you've got your first shard. There's going to be a lot of that, but then there may also be stuff like these huge areas that are all blocked off, and you'll need to find a way up to these upper areas that are maybe way over somewhere else, and you need to climb up like a multi-tiered, section in the landscape. Climb up here, you can then come get this, and then you can come around here, and you can come get this, and you can go in here. So there'll be a very multi-tiered approach to the level design as well, but this is the first planet, so there's no additional tools at your disposal yet. I have a few other ideas that I might introduce on this planet. Some sort of like fungoid jump pad, let's say. So say there's, let me give this like a bluish color. This is something I'm thinking about that I might add soon. You have like a fungoid pad thing like this. You step on it and it catapults you up somewhere. So maybe there'll be some areas that are like way up here that you can't even get to. There's no climbing up to or anything, but you have to figure out, you have to search around and look around for something. And then at one point you'll find one of these little fungoid little jump pads, and it'll bounce you up, and then you can jump off there and leave forever and never go back. I think this now gives you an idea of how large I want these areas to be. They're pretty big. We've been running around this area, this little prototype area, for quite a while, and it's quite large, but I really want this to feel like this huge, daunting, dried seabed with so much weird alien life and places to explore. Now that's a lot of talking and a lot of me just scribbling around in Photoshop for the start of a new devlog. I do apologize for that. I just wanted to really explain what the gameplay loop is going to be and what my target is, because right now I'm just building all these necessary elements out so that we have core features within our gameplay that we can then apply to this loop. If I really think about it, all we have so far is the walking, the rolling, the auto-jumping as our movement mechanics, and then for traversal mechanics we have the auto-climbing and we have swimming. To finish the core open area of World 1, we also probably need these jump pads and a way to kind of show where the player is going to land, so we can kind of figure out that in our game design a little bit. And I want freely climbable walls. The best example of this is, again, Ocarina of Time. You have these sheer walls that you just can't climb up like a normal one, like we normally have these climbable areas. So some vines or something like that where we can just freely climb up them, which lets us really add to this level of verticality, having these climbable surfaces that are, you can go up and down on, left and right on, and that sort of stuff. Every now and again, I will stop from helping. It will help my brain to just stop and not be overwhelmed by the amount of blueprint work I'm doing, and we'll just do something creative. Like we did last time, we jumped on that dungeon design and we designed the exterior of the main dungeon aesthetic. We'll then, in another devlog or two, we might design a creature, a wildlife creature, or we might design what the shards will look like. A load of things like that. And there we go. Hopefully, if you've skipped past that, at some point you'll go back and listen to that, because that's the whole section in Photoshop where I explained about the gameplay loop. But I'm sure if you did skip ahead, you don't want to hear me talk even more about it. So let's talk about jump pads. This is the main thing you see me building here. These are going to be they're going to be blueprints I can place around the level, different models, different things that I can place around and have spline trajectories on to propel our character to different locations. First off, I was just testing standard launching. I didn't implement any sort of spline pathing or anything like that. This was just launching the character. Didn't quite work how I wanted, but it has all of the momentum and the systems there that I was pretty happy with. So I was like, okay, we can go with this. Well, this is a good base to work from. So I kept tweaking this, kept working on this even more, thinking about, these upper areas, these different places I want the characters to be able to go in the world and where they can explore, where there might be puzzles that can utilize these and stuff like that. I added one of my old jumping animations back in so that when you are propelled, you kind of go into this sort of constant falling state, which looked pretty good actually. I didn't use it on my character normally because it doesn't really need it, but for this it felt like it was a good choice to add that in. And now I started implementing the spline and making a system so that the character moves along that spline after the collision, the overlap with the jump pad itself. This works pretty well. There's a few animation issues with transitioning from the actual falling or jumping animation from the jump pad into normal landing, but if you get the end point of the spline in the right place, it looks pretty good and it just kind of smoothly transitions back to like a walking idle. So that's fine. I think we can fix that while we're building the levels and stuff. Right now, obviously, on this level, I'm not going to make it perfect. We're just prototyping and figuring things out. But overall, this worked pretty great, and I'm surprised how quickly getting the jump pad to come together actually was. I thought it was going to be a much more stressful, tenuous process than it actually was. The only thing that I'm having problem with here is getting the camera to rotate back behind the character and then get the character to always be moving in that line of the spline, because sometimes even if I rotated the blueprint in the overworld or in the editor, it rotated at 90 degrees, you'd still be facing the other direction, so you'd be floating like turn 90 degrees the wrong way. So I fixed that by adding a forward vector in and making sure that forward vector of the spline, as you see the arrow component that's in there, the character will always face that arrow, the same direction the arrow component is facing from the jump pad while they're traveling through the air, and when they land they'll always remain in that as well. And then obviously the other point is that we want the player to always be going through that direction and the spline following the spline in that direction as well. So splines are pretty much always going to be two-dimensional. There's probably not going to be any crazy stuff going on with them, but let me show you exactly how this works. So we just jump up like that. That's one spline, and then this middle one sends us up a little higher and then across. And you see there's a little bit of a weird step animation thing when you land, but it's pretty good. It does the job, it works, and I'm pretty happy with that. And yeah, I think, you know, showing you here how it could implement into the game. These little flowers in the prototype level are going to be our little propellers in the world, where we can click and jump on them and they'll send it up higher. This is a slightly more refined version here. You can see it works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that. Really low poly as well. It looks pretty nice. It's just like a few planes with a texture on it. It's a really, really low poly little creation there, but I'm really happy with how it works. And as you approach it, the petals will all unfurl and you can jump into it. So now, this is me jumping into free climbable surfaces. Now, compared to how quickly I just did the jump pad, this is a much larger endeavor. And there's a lot going into this. I have to make sure that the movement changes, because while you're technically climbing a wall, you need to be defined as flying. It needs to stop other inputs. You need to only be able to move in certain axes, and you need to be able to lock to that surface, which is pretty tricky. It isn't the easiest process to get working. You can see, even though we're speeding through here, there's a lot of, you know, different problems. But at this point, I was just about getting it. You can see with the line trace where I'm drawing on the wall, you know, I'm kind of confined to that now, and I'm stuck to it, which works really well. So I was like, okay, at this point, we have a really basic system working, so let's build the blend space for a few really basic animations and just get those working. Even by the end of this devlog, these animations haven't changed much. They're still pretty rough, because I'll just refine them and polish them in the future. Most of it is just positioning of hands and legs and things like that, but for now, for just testing, you know, I thought I'd get these blend spaces in and ready to go. We have an up, a down, a left, and a right, and the down and right are just reverses of the left and the up. It saves a little bit of time, and you can see here, as soon as we collide with this wall, we start going into this climbing animation, and we can go down again, and we can stop, and we go into an idle, or we can move around and do that. It works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that. I need to figure out a few more things, add a few more things, such as if you're near a ground plane at the bottom, it detects that ground plane and pops you off the wall, and then you can start moving around again. I think, I don't do it in this devlog, I probably won't do it for a few. I might even not do it in a devlog, but I think I'll add the feature where if you press a button, a specific button when you're on the wall, you will also hop off the wall no matter what height you're at. So, say you're near the top and you're like, oh, actually I don't want to climb this wall, you can click a button and it will drop you all the way down. I didn't implement that, because for now, this is fine. You can climb up the wall by the end of this episode and vault up to the top of it, or you can climb to the bottom of it and pop off of it at the bottom. And you can see here now I've implemented those left and rights that I was talking about, so we can shuffle over to the left, we can climb up, we can go back down, we can shuffle over to the right, and that works pretty well. I'm really, really happy with how that's turned out. The animation's obviously quite glitchy here, switching between them. It looks like some sort of weird dance, but it works, and I thought this was going to be really difficult, and it was harder than the jump pads to get working, but overall, this is going to be a pretty easy system. And while I've been making this, I've also made sure that you can collide with these walls when falling, so that check is done, and if you land on the walls when falling, you will also latch onto them, which is an important thing for me to be able to get working, because it means we can do some really cool traversal mechanics and puzzles using that. You can see here I'm just checking sort of distances and things like that. But the character at this point can just keep climbing non-stop on and off that plane. As soon as they're on that plane, there's no way to get off it yet. So a lot of my tweaking now for the next, it was a few hours that I've really trimmed down to a few minutes here. It was all about me trying to figure that system out and making sure that if you weren't overlapping, if the trigger wasn't being like, oh, this is a wall that you can free climb on, it would then pop you off and you would be detecting, you know, a void, and it would either throw you off the wall or it would climb you up. What I just added there was a couple of input commands so that if you press forward or up, you know, W or up on the joystick, it will climb you up when you get to the top of one of these surfaces, which is pretty useful because we want to be able to have it so that when you trigger that and getting to that top edge, you will continue to climb up above it. The blue line trace you can see here is me doing the popping off when it reaches a ground plane below you, which took a little bit of tweaking to get right. And I was doing a bunch of testing with this as well, where should I make it the player step really far away from the wall? Because if I wasn't teleporting you away from the wall at all, you just climb the wall again. So you had to at least be a couple of pixels away from it, a couple of world units away from it. But I was also testing with what if I've rotated the character 180 degrees? And after a while, I just decided I didn't like that. And I feel like if you drop off the wall, you'd still be facing the wall. It's then the player's choice and the player's input if they want to then turn around, press backwards, start walking towards the camera and get away from the wall, or they could press forwards and start climbing into the wall again. Maybe they made the mistake of pressing that button and they've come off the wall, or maybe they want to just climb it again. So instead of taking that away from the player, I've left it so that you're just still facing the wall, and if you want to climb it again, or if you want to move around, you can do that pretty easily. At this point, the whole system is pretty much in and working pretty smoothly. There's just one final thing I have to add. But if you see here, I can climb up, and I can climb back down, and then it pops me off. And I can run away, climb up, come down, run away. It works really well. It works really smoothly in the game. And I've tested it to no end. But like I said, I think I'll add a button press that you can do at some point that will drop you off no matter where you are on the whole wall as well. So you'll have those two mechanics. Like if you want to climb to the bottom and get off, you can, or you can just press a button and fall off at some point. That will work as well. So the very final thing I'm adding here before we move on, and future Matt, or past Matt, I guess, will walk you through all the things we've added and how it all works together, is the process of climbing up to the very top. Because right now, we've actually not been fully confined in a way. It'll just pop you off the wall. So now I had to create a new line trace where it realized that if there was no space above you and you weren't colliding with this vine surface, this free climbable surface anymore, if you weren't colliding with it anymore and that line trace wasn't pinging it, it should then climb you up. And thanks to root motion and a bunch of different animation tricks and some move components, you will now trigger from being flying into walking again as you transition up in that sort of clamber animation. It's the same one as you do on a ledge grab on the normal walls, but now it's playing on a free climbable wall. It will just pull you up and put you on top where you need to be. And yeah, it works really well. Again, it's not perfect. The animation is a little sloppy and a little not exactly synced up as much as we would like, but here we are in engine. So this is what we normally look like on a climb. We can run over here, and we can actually now free jump straight into that. That's an auto jump, I should say, into a free climb, and it works great. And if we are climbing sideways like this, and we come to an edge like this, and the game's like, oh, we're not gliding anymore, that happens, which is great. It's exactly what we want to have happen. You can see how far off the animation is here. Again, I'll fix that before the end of the episode a little bit. But this works great. I actually quite like the speed. I didn't want it to be too fast. I wanted it to be quite methodical. But you can see we vault up and we're on top. It all works is the main thing. This whole system just works now, and I'm really happy about that. So again, we can climb up here, and hops us up just like that. And over to past Matt to walk us through all of this. And here we are back in the engine again. I'm going to turn my controller on, and I'm just going to show you all where we're up to. So the main additions, as you've seen this time, is we've added the jump pads, which I will show you how they look in the level as well. So these all have different trajectories. They're taking you to the same place, but if we want them to just boost you up onto a higher platform, we can do that pretty easy. I could even show you me setting that up in a second. And then the big one is free climbable walls. So I can, stop on the wall and climb up. I can move left. I can move right. I can move down. I can move up. And if I go all the way down, it will just pop you off. And if you keep holding, back or down, then it'll just, do that. But if you stand still, it'll just put you there, and it won't put you back on the wall unless you push forward. So we can climb up. And it'll climb us up. There we go. Works really nicely. And a really good example of why this is great is this block here that's in front of us is actually not climbable. Even though this one down here is a climbable surface for us to just be able to climb on like that, this one isn't. So that's why that, this green viney wall over here in the level would be green and viney, would be needed. But here's another good one. This surface isn't climbable, this orange one right here, but I've added this little section here in red that is climbable. So we could have little areas within the design that are climbable, even though the rest of it isn't, which works really nicely. They're the main things. It doesn't seem like a lot, but I realize that these devlogs have been getting quite long, so I am trying to shorten them a little bit. but if you want to see it in progress here we go. What's weird is if I let go on mouse and on controller, it pretty much stops you. Yeah. But if I press W on the keyboard, it just goes. Like, it just wants to go. It doesn't want to stop. Again, these animations still aren't final. There's still some things I need to tweak. The main problem with those animations, like if I drop down here, jump back on the wall, the main problem here is the hand kind of going through the wall, or the hand just feeling like it floats there. But they're pretty easy fixes, and right now, animations are less of an importance to me. I can tinker with those and tweak them and improve them over time. One feature I really do like about the whole climbing wall thing is it gives me quite a lot more option for traversal. So right here, we can actually jump from this platform and go straight into a climb. And if we wanted to come down, we could come down and it'll pop us off at the bottom. Camera should nicely position itself back. There we go. And there we go. I feel like that's a pretty nice mechanic to have, because now we can almost do leaps of faith where you're just being like, woo, and you jump down and you just jump and catch the wall at the bottom and then climb up it. I think that'll be really nice. So let me show you how the jump pads work a little bit. So we'll take this one, we'll just move it over here for now as an example. And then let me get, I don't know, maybe a block this sort of size. You know, this huge sort of surface that you can't climb up. Like this. So normally, yeah, you wouldn't be able to climb this. There's no climbable surfaces on it, but you have a jump pad. And this jump pad, we can actually edit in real time in the editor here. So I want to move this so it's going to kind of propel us up. Let's tweak this curve here a little bit. So all of these spline points are Bezier curves. So we can have this boost us up here, like this. And then we want it to land probably somewhere like here. So we can reposition this one a little bit to be about here. And now we can jump in and go on here. And there we go. Now we're up on this upper platform. And we can do that in the level and tweak it and refine it until we're really happy with the trajectory we take, which works really, really nicely. And of course, the camera rotates back behind the character. I didn't have it at first, but I felt like it was quite important to have that feature so that if you're, I don't know, camera's all the way over here, but you want to make sure that it's facing the way the character is about to move after the land. And even if you're all the way around the other way, it works quite nicely. So yeah, let me hop into the actual prototype level and show you how the jump pads are looking in there now. Okay, here we are in the level. And as you can see, we have a couple of new pieces of scenery here, and these are our jump pads in the level. We can come up here, it'll propel us off, and obviously that, and then it closes back up again. And I like the idea of, as you get close to it, as you can see, I'm not quite there with the anim montage kind of happening exactly when I want it to, and it's like double triggering and stuff. And then sometimes it just doesn't trigger at all. I need to figure that out a little bit more, but in the level, these will propel you around, and hopefully there's going to be a better way with me to be able to deal with these anim montages. But I'll keep you all updated as I tweak and work on those. I wasn't happy with how these flowers looked in that last little recording, so here's how they look now. I think they work much better. And there's a little bit of an animation that now plays. You can see it as you boost away. The flower petal does sort of bunch up underneath you and propel you up. And just about make it out. It's very subtle, but it does like snap closed. And I think that looks much better. And you can kind of walk in and out and in and out and in. And then sometimes it just breaks. There we go. I don't know quite where my border is, but yeah, it should just work and reverse pretty smoothly. There we go. Yeah, that works much better now. Sweet. It's probably time we start looking at combat, which is a little scary, but I guess that's for the next devlog and future version of me to figure out. But hopefully you all have enjoyed this one. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback below. At the time of recording this, I actually haven't released any of the devlogs yet, but before I record the next one, I'll at least make a couple public and out there, maybe just 1 and 2, and then slowly start releasing 3 and 4. I don't want to spam people with devlogs too much. But hopefully you've been enjoying them. And yeah, I'm really excited to show you where this game is going to go and the plans for it that I haven't revealed yet. There's some really cool things I want to do. Right, see you all next time. Goodbye.